We are ready to begin with our next session. It's the overview of operational performance. So would you guys like to kick us off and introduce yourselves? One more time, Kevin. Thank you.
Yeah, Kevin Powell, Director of Facilities.
Tom Foster with JLL.
All right.
Sorry about that. With us, we've got Lance Moore.
Lance
Lance is our FM lead on our account, and we have Jason May, who's one of our facility managers and our resident IT expert. So,
All right. So I was going to kick off this session by diving in deep with the KPIs till somebody read them off in the last session. Thanks, Thad. So I want to start this just by saying that, to me, this is one of the more important things you can do. Setting up properly crafted KPIs and pairing those with well-defined roles and responsibilities is instrumental in leading to a outcome-based contract, which means you have less people that have to oversee it. It works in everybody's benefit. The more you define how, what the contractor or the vendor has to do, how does he have to procure, what's his limit on what he can spend, those type of things. Can he make policy or procedure changes? That leads to better and swifter execution of duties. So as I had said earlier, we had set these up 50% financial, 30% operational, and 20% customer service. Once again, these all support the governor's goal of best possible service at least possible cost. The financials are set up 30% with operational cost, 15% on utilities, and 5% on diversity. And we talked about on the diversity, they're more than 3 times what any other state contract is held to. On the operational side, it's split 12.5% each on reactive maintenance, on-time completions, and preventive maintenance completions. And once again, these are all set up to be judged on time by the SLAs, or on preventive maintenance when the when the system kicks out the preventive task. These need to be done in this month or this quarter. If they're not, then that is not on-time completion, obviously. Critical system uptime is a little different. So as I said, that the Tennessee Tower and the Capitol and Legislative Plaza are what we deem contractually as critical buildings. JLL is one of their KPIs. There can be no system downtime in those buildings at all. 0. So anything that is in their control, they have to maintain it. That we don't accept any downtime at all, which is pretty extraordinary. Oh, by the way, they have not failed to hit 0 in these buildings. Customer service, tenant. The tenant is the survey that's sent out with the work orders. When a tenant puts in a work order, as they'll show you, the system kicks back an email to them to acknowledge that the work order has been entered in the system, and a link in that email is to that survey. The client survey is a little different. That is, I've called the client survey, it's a survey that I send out to DGS employees that have frequent interaction with JLL to say, do you think that they're doing what they should do in a timely manner? And that's pretty much it on the KPIs.
Okay, so just a few things that we wanted to touch on around this. Some of this we've already talked about, so I won't belabor the point too much. But as we think about KPIs and think about, okay, well, how are you achieving those? we've talked about the self-performance aspect of this, right? So that's really about trying to drive to savings. Things that I would mention around that, we sort of keep a tally on the number of training hours that we provide to our staff. We're now up over 6,500 hours of training, and certainly climbing every day, I think. And part of that is to provide certifications and things that will help them do their job and help them self-perform. I'll give you one quick example. Our fire doors all have to be inspected. I believe it's annually, right, Lance? And there's a cost with that, $200 every door. We've got thousands of doors that have to be done. Well, we had a member of our team that was able to identify a program where we could bring somebody in and train our team to do those, to get certified to be able to do those inspections. That's saving the states thousands of dollars, as you can imagine, annually, because the people that they're already paying for can now provide those or do those inspections and not have to hire somebody to do that. Just one quick example of finding ways to do that work that previously had to be sent out of house. So those are the key elements I would tell you there. From a strategic sourcing perspective, the key word to me there is always strategic. So as you think about that and think about dedicating resources to that, we have a dedicated sourcing manager on our account. So works for JLL and is constantly thinking about ways to do that better, leveraging our platform. We have over 4 billion square feet of real estate that we manage across the world. So we've got spending power. How are we leveraging that and bringing it to the state of Tennessee? So Jason spends a lot of time thinking about that, finding ways to leverage that. Even today, almost 4 years into the contract, we continue to find ways to do that. So it's dedicating those resources and then making sure that you leverage the best of what you can bring. We talked about it earlier, and I see she's not here any longer, but we leveraged the state's contract with Granger because it's a better deal than we had. So we do look at those things and make sure that we're utilizing the best thing for the state. The preventative maintenance program, I will tell you, just have it, right? We realized it wasn't here. We brought it. Everybody knows about PM programs. Ours has continued to build. We watched a number of PM work orders that occur over the years of the contract, and that number continues to climb, and the reactive work orders continue to decrease. So the sort of the paradigm you'd like to see, but that'll get you there, and you need it. The customer satisfaction surveys, we've talked about that quite a bit, and I think we'll continue to do that and continue to mine that data. That's where I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues to give you a little bit of flavor of our system. But all of this stuff that we talk about and the KPIs and the measurements of things, you can't do that without data, and you have to have a way to capture that. So we use our call center, our 1-800 call center that's up in Pittsburgh, and we use our online work order system to get us that data that we can then analyze and bring back to the state for measurement of our what we're doing, and then the look forward analysis and thinking about how we might run this business differently.
What's the state's role in verifying that work is completed and quality and on time, those kind of things?
As far as normal work orders, we basically rely upon the customer service replies with the whole idea that if they're not doing their job, we'll end up hearing about it.
So to be clear, this rolls up to your KPI discussion under your governance model.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Also on your KPI or your IPP, your individual one for Kevin, right?
I don't know of anything that's
Just
not
to be
on
clear.
my IPPs. So to that point, as I stated, I'm the only day-to-day operational oversight. I have one employee that he's a field inspector. Part of their deliverables are they do inspections of facilities on a schedule depending on the size and whether it's owned or leased, quarterly or annual. He goes and oversees a percentage of these inspections, and while there, he goes through, and I've tasked him with inspecting common or public areas. So I want to know what it looks like when somebody walks in one of our buildings. So to that degree, he is looking how they're doing as far as keeping up our buildings in that aspect. He's not necessarily going into the mechanical rooms and looking at the air handlers, but he is looking how the public views our spaces when they walk in.
What's your answer when the legislature asks, well, how do we know that JLL just isn't reducing costs by not doing work like the state apparently was doing?
Well, my answer would be the same, is our customer service SAT numbers are staying up, so if we weren't doing the job, we'd know about it.
The other item I would suggest, and I think we've had that conversation, is to look at the volume of work orders, and we continue to sort of look at that scenario we talked about where the number of PM or preventative maintenance work orders is continuing to go up. Our level of reactive maintenance is going down, so we certainly are able to tell that story. We look at success stories, things that have occurred, and try and communicate those as much as possible. And so it's those sort of things that I think help to address that. The back end of that is certainly the client satisfaction and the scores from those work order surveys.
Could you clarify on the number? I'm not sure we shared those, did we, of reactive versus preventative, and how those have changed over the contract time, and who can, what is a reactive, and who can file reactive kind of?
Yeah, again, the reactive work orders, anyone that has access, who has been granted access to the system and goes through tn.gov, can place a work order, right? And so those will go in as reactive work orders, and that's what we're talking about. So all of the hot, cold calls, all of the need more paper towel calls go into the reactive category. So to your point, I think as you start to see those go down, we also know that means we're probably hitting the mark a little bit better than we were before and not having those type of issues.
What percentage of the reactive are by occupants versus JLL staff?
I'm not sure I know that. Lance, do you, off the top of your head, know that?
Not off the top of my head, but those would be proactive as well, and those numbers are going down. The number put in by our staff continues to go down, which is a good thing.
Understood that they do preventative maintenance, but they also do reactive maintenance. They're still finding things that need to be fixed, and they're
absolutely
proactive on the reactive side.
Yes, they're proactive on the reactive side as well.
How much time does it take an organization to learn the system and then ramp up so they're actually utilizing the system like it should be?
On the JLL side, you mean?
No, on
or
the
on the
customer
state side?
Yeah, on the state side.
So, some more than others. It all depends. Some agencies were glad and grabbed a hold of it and ran, and some we're still trying to pull along. There's no set time.
And we continue to make ourselves available to train agencies. So
Absolutely.
If an agency ever comes to Kevin and says, hey, can Lance or somebody train us on OneView? Absolutely. We provide those all the time.
And I think it's a great question because agencies are going to have turnover, right? So we can do a training, and then 6 months from now they could have turned over 20% of their workforce. So we work with the tenant services group that DGS has, and we'll identify where we think that might be helpful. And so Lance is constantly out helping do that training. But as you all saw, that's utilizing the system there, the 30, 45 seconds that Lance took. So hopefully those that are savvy enough online and feel comfortable with it pick it up fairly easily. We then can provide feedback to the agencies as they like in terms of the what's happening, the number of work orders, where is that falling in terms of quality of service, but we'll push that back to them. They don't have to learn how to analyze the data. We get it back to them.
You may want to describe, I guess, how a lease is handled this way. compared to an owned building? Because your staff's not doing the work inside a lease. So,
Sure. On the leased facilities, the tenants, we still encourage them to use OneView. Everything needs to go into the OneView system and not contact the landlord directly because we don't have, or the call center. Yeah, so OneView or the 800 number. And once those work orders are in, our FM teams get them, and we reach out directly to the landlord. Or if it's a housekeeping issue that we're responsible for, we'll reach out to our housekeeping vendor to make sure the issue is taken care of. So we are the go-between between the agency and the landlord, so we'd like to have that, take that off of their plate, and we take control of that to take care of that for them.
Could you talk about the other Jason, so to speak? You said he was your go-to guy for IT. You got go-to people. So not all project managers are the same, I guess.
Yeah, my reference to that was Jason May, who is one of our millennials and certainly has learned the system very well, as you can see. So a little tongue in cheek that he's our one of our FMs that's most savvy with the system. So we lean on him quite a bit for that.
Don't you have some that have expertise in certain areas more than others, and you rely on them to help bring up training or solve problems in some of the other buildings they may not be assigned to?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got our staff, our team certainly is built with specialists. Lance runs our FM team, and then he has a group of 9 facility managers, each of which have their own strengths and skill sets. Some of those folks are former state employees that have come aboard. Jana Schrott, who's one of our FMs, is a person that came over from the state, has excelled, and we've promoted her, and she's taken on a bigger role and handles some of our more sensitive properties. We have a energy and operations manager who has over 30 years of experience and was really focused specifically on our energy initiatives early on and making sure that we brought best practice to the team. So we really try and align our team with those specialties so that we bring the full platform of expertise to the state, whether it's Jason Miglin, who is our sourcing manager, and so he brings that expertise to the table, energy and operations, IT. Those are all people dedicated to this account, but then we have thousands of people that work for JLL that we're able to align with and tap into as needed. You can imagine there's a lot that goes into maintaining this system. We don't have a person on our dedicated team that does that work, but we certainly have hundreds and thousands of people behind the scenes in other places making sure that system is functional and operational 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. That's part of what we were talking about, where to create that, you'd spend millions of dollars, not just creating it, but maintaining it every year. And so we think it's a big value add.
You had mentioned that everybody with the state email address has access to this. Does those state email addresses have to be uploaded into the system in order to get access, or is it just you log on and you get a password, or do the agencies control who has access to the system?
Yeah, let me just show you real quick.
First, let me say, we don't try to mandate who does or doesn't have. If they have a tn.gov, they'll give them access. If the agencies want to mandate who they want to come on, we don't intervene in that at all.
So down here, if it's a new user, they just put in the registration key, which is the same across the state. So it's the same registration key for anybody, and then that'll bring them up to a registration page, and they put in their name, email address, location, phone number. And once they do that, they'll get their login credentials and password.
So Lance, talk about if an agency has restricted that individual or that group of people to a single person. So their employees could still go in here and log in. So that's on the agency to control who they're going to allow to access. But this site is available to anybody. So it's on the agency to control who can go in here and get a login.
So is there a capability in the system then, if an agency does want to control who's putting in a work order, that if somebody within that agency puts in a work order, it rolls through a chain of command at that agency?
We have the ability to add 10 email addresses to one individual's profile. So let's say Department of Health, they have an individual who wants to see work orders put in by all of these employees. We can add those employees' email addresses to that person's profile where they will get notified that one of their employees put in a work order. But the system doesn't have the ability to restrict.
I would say that right now the agencies police who does and does not put in work orders by asking them to pull reports of who's put in work orders.
Correct.
Then they'll go through and say, why is Mary putting in work orders? She should be doing this.
Okay, so in the pull-down menu, when you pull it down by agency, then that would go back to that populated database of, okay, this employee is from this agency.
Yes, so we run monthly reports for Department of Health, Department of Children's Services, Human Services. Whoever wants the monthly report, we will run a report for all of the work orders put in during that month for certain facilities or certain floors, whatever they want, and we send them that data, and they do with it what they want.
So on a worldwide basis, does everybody use the same system?
No, they don't. And we've shown you what we have here, but we're certainly not married to this one. I think we wanted to just give you a sense for how it's used and all of that. So we're pretty well system agnostic and can use a number of systems. There's a lot of good ones out there. And you heard earlier about us spending a lot of money in IT, and we actually purchased one that has a CMMS program to it. So the key is that you have one, and that it can be functional, easy to use for the folks on your team, and it gives you the data you need. Those are the key elements.
Any more questions? Well, let's give our panelists a round of applause, please.